Hello and welcome to Talk Richmond, a podcast brought to you by Richmond Council and hosted by me, Councillor Jim Millard. In this week's episode, I'll be reflecting on how the borough has responded to the outbreak of the coronavirus. We'll hear from the leader of Richmond Council, Councillor Gareth Roberts, and the director of Richmond Council for Voluntary Services, Catherine Williamson. So, welcome, Gareth.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Bearing up.
Good. Thank you for coming and joining me today. The outbreak of coronavirus has, of course, for all of us, brought with extraordinary change and uncertainty. And a lot of us will have seen the government's daily briefings. But of course, local councils have been playing a huge role in responding to the crisis, keeping essential services running. So really, Gareth, how has the borough coped with the outbreak of coronavirus?
Well, at the risk of sounding, like a town hall trump, I think we've done well. Not everything's been perfect, of course. Nothing ever is. But what's happened as a result of the pandemic is people have seen just what it is that a well-run council can do for them, particularly here in Richmond. And they've seen that a well-run council will touch practically every part of their lives, whether it's bin collections, schools, libraries, emergency funding for those who need support, healthcare, adult social care. All of those things are the bread and butter issues for a council.
So what sort of things were the key elements in the initial response?
Well, what we had to do first and foremost was make sure that the most vulnerable in Richmond were taken care of. So we moved very quickly to set up the community hub, which was effectively the council's front door for services. So anybody that was shielding, elderly, isolating, living alone, they could get hold of the council, find out what services were available to them, also ask for help if it was needed. So if people wanted to be the people within their local community who went out and helped those who needed help most, they went through the community hub, and we worked very closely with the Richmond Council for Voluntary Services. I know you're going to be talking to Catherine later.
Yes.
We work very closely with them and with Age UK Richmond to ensure that the help was given to those people who were desperately crying out for help. I mean, at the moment, it does seem as though lockdown, the full force of lockdown, is something of a distant memory. But I'm sure that you remember the queues stretching outside supermarkets, the panic buying, and the just general level of we don't know what's going on. And it was the council's role to step in and offer some form of centering, some form of rationale about how we can cope and how we can move through the whole of the pandemic and make sure that there is going to be, for want of a better term, light at the end of that particular tunnel. Nobody can prepare you for the scale of what is coming. I mean, we had individuals within the borough who were creating face shields. There was one company I'm aware of that usually makes stage props, and they reconditioned or repurposed their machinery in order to make the face shields. We had local schools doing exactly the same using their DT equipment rooms.
Yes, it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was really good. And it was
we will probably touch on this with Catherine Williamson as well. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Councillor Millard. It's lovely to be here.
Great. Just to kick off, could you tell us a little bit about Richmond Council for Voluntary Services? I think for short, I'm going to call it RCVS from now on, if that's all right.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. Yes, RCVS is a charity that supports other charities in Richmond. We have over 750 voluntary and community groups in the borough, and we aim to support them in a variety of ways. So helping them have their voice heard, representing them, also helping them with capacity building, so finding finance, making sure they run properly, and of course, importantly, helping them recruit and manage volunteers who are the lifeblood of the local voluntary sector.
What was your initial reaction, and what were your concerns for the voluntary sector as the pandemic developed?
Well, I suppose really as a support organisation for the sector, we were keen to see how we could help organisations do what they needed to do to adapt to the changing situation, and things did develop very quickly. things we started noticing was that from about the middle of March, people started being interested in helping to support the local community in various ways. There were particular organisations that were really quick at adapting what they were doing, say, for example, stopping their usual day-to-day activities, taking people out in the community, and immediately changed to more of an emergency response situation. So I'm thinking about organisations like Age UK Richmond, who run a partnership of organisations which together are called the Community Independent Living Service, or CILS for short. And they work with a wide range of groups in the borough which help people with disabilities, older people. They include groups like Rules, Richmond Aid, and the neighbourhood care groups. We've got 8 of those in the borough, and they all help to support people in various ways. So they, along with the council and other organisations like Crossroads, sort of came together to start thinking, right, how can we help people?
That sounds amazing. That sounds like a lot of voluntary groups. And, I've been really heartened hearing about the voluntary response.
Absolutely, yes. From the 13th of March till the end of May, we had 3,100 people from Richmond register to volunteer.
Wow.
It's an absolutely fantastic number. To put that into some context, normally on our database, we have about 2,000 people at any one time who are looking for roles. That wasn't always as straightforward as it might sound, because in a way, there were almost too many people for the amount of roles available to start with, which is a very fortunate position to be in. One organisation, one of the neighbourhood care groups, they recruited, I think it was 200 people through us, and they've taken on 150 of those to be regular volunteers, which is fantastic.
Amazing. And can volunteers still sign up now?
Yes, they can. We are still taking people on. I mean, obviously, there are quite a few people on our list, but we're always happy to receive new people join our list. If there are people looking, they can go to our website, which is www.richmondcvs.org.uk, and follow the links to the volunteer service and register there.
Obviously, volunteers are coming forward in huge numbers. It's amazing to hear about. Have you seen an increase in community spirit?
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I think it has been amazing. Obviously, I think those 3,100 volunteers show something, the number of people who want to help. And that's in addition to all the other people who are doing something in their local community. I mean, through our Twitter feed and on Facebook and things, we hear of lots of examples of people doing things in their community to help others. People are going around using their talents to entertain people, singing on doorsteps, things like that. We even heard about one thing that one of my colleagues told me recently was Park Lane Stables have been taking around one of their ponies to sort of show people through the window, so just to cheer people up, just these little things that are going on. And I think another example
Kept the grass short as well.
Yes, that's one thing, yes. But there's definitely, I think, a lot of people who are wanting to help. One of the, I think it's also useful as well when younger people start getting involved. The TAG Youth Club, which works with disabled children, some of their members who are taking part in a London-wide youth leaders programme were making up activity packs for families that are connected with Achieving for Children's short break scheme. And I think these activity packs were put together by these young people, and they included sort of word searches and jokes that they'd made up, as well as other things people could do. And they were distributed out. And the feedback apparently from the families was tremendous, with one mum saying it was the first time she'd got her child away from a screen in 2 months. And I think it's important to bear in mind there are a lot of families that are actually going to be sort of badly affected by the COVID-19 situation, both now and in the coming weeks. There's been an increase in use of things like the food banks, and some of those voluntary organisations I've mentioned, I know are doing deliveries to families. I know Crossroads are doing quite a few deliveries to families, food drops and things, because families can't afford to get the food in other ways. And there are also some projects going on, I believe, or being started to try and ensure those children that don't have easy access to online facilities to be able to do schoolwork, etc., are going to be able to get some support to help that to happen. I think that's one of the things that we have to remember with Richmond. It's an extremely fortunate borough in lots of ways, and is obviously seen as a very wealthy, happy borough, which it is in many ways. But there are some people in the borough who don't have such good opportunity. And I think what we want to ensure is that COVID-19 doesn't increase sort of inequalities in the borough, but that it tries to reduce them.
Absolutely. And I have to say, in my role as tenants champion, I've been very aware that there are going to be people who are facing serious deprivation as a result. And, Richmond is seen quite rightly as a fairly wealthy borough, but we do have significant numbers of people who don't earn very much money, who live in social housing and need that support. And I've been very keen to talk to our housing associations to make sure that they have the ability to put really supportive plans in place to be flexible and understanding when people might need to move on to universal credit or have other financial challenges. And if anyone's listening who's in that position, do talk to your housing association. They will want to support you, and your councillors and your tenants champion absolutely here to make sure that that happens. So, Councillor Roberts, you've mentioned some of the great work that's being done by the council, but during unprecedented times, it's inevitable. Things won't always go according to plan. So what did go wrong?
The one thing which I think, looking back, is something which we couldn't have foreseen, to be honest, but we had and continue to have an issue with the waste and recycling collections. And this is as a result of something of a perfect storm. The pandemic lockdown started. We changed the contractor.
And that was a planned change, right?
That was a planned change. The new contract was awarded months ago, and it just so happened that the timing of the handover of the contract from supplier to supplier coincided with the COVID-19 lockdown. Right. And of course, everybody's at home. And when everybody is at home and all the shops are closed, not only is all of the waste which is being generated, which would normally be spread out amongst workplaces, schools, in the street, cafes, bars, clubs, all of that, all gets concentrated at home because everybody is staying at home. So we saw something like about a 45% increase in the amount of waste and recycling which was being put out on a weekly basis. Now, we usually see that increase at around Christmas, and it's once a year and it's manageable. But with Christmas, once a week, every week for the last 3 months. And as a result, some people's bin services haven't been as good as they should be. We're not resting on our laurels by any means, but we are doing our best in very, very challenging circumstances.
And I think most people get that, but at the same time, if your bins haven't been collected, you rapidly start to lose that perspective, and it's about getting that sorted, because that becomes quite serious for your household.
Yes, it's pretty much the one universal service that everybody in the borough will use. Many people will use the libraries, not everybody. Many people will have kids that go to the schools, not everybody, but everybody has waste, everybody has bins, and everybody has recycling. And you notice it the minute it goes wrong. And quite rightly, people get annoyed about it. So what we did, we got more staff in, we increased the number of shifts that they were working. They didn't just do Monday to Friday, they were out on Saturdays, out on Sundays. It's a huge scale operation, and fair play to the guys on the front line who are doing their best, because they really are up against it. Yeah.
Hats off to them.
Yeah.
The situation we've faced over the past 3 months has truly been extraordinary. The challenges the council faced were wide-ranging, from continuing to empty people's bins, as Gareth explained, to organising business support grants and emergency shelter for the homeless. From chatting to Catherine and Gareth, the silver lining in all of this has clearly been the huge outpouring of community spirit. The enormous role that both council and communities are playing it's uplifting, and the partnership between residents and council will be the way that we rebuild and even come back stronger from this crisis. Thank you for joining us for our first ever episode of Talk Richmond. Next time, we'll be looking at the weeks and months ahead and what the borough can expect going forwards as lockdown measures relax, but the threat of the virus remains. For further information on the topics discussed, check out the show notes below. If you have any questions, email us on talk@richmond.gov.uk, and, very, very important, please like and subscribe. I'm Jim Millard. Thanks for listening.